Right, so hello. Thank you very much and welcome to the idling action training presentation. We're recording this to share it more generally. So although this is being recorded for the spring 2022 idling action interventions, actually it will be relevant for any future events as well. So I hope to not make it too specific to the spring of 2022, but apologies if it is. So today we're going to cover air quality and its effects, a little bit of HCCSP, just so you understand what that logo in the corner is all about, understand what an idling action event is, how to talk to drivers, and your role as a volunteer at an idling action event. So once you've completed this training, you'll be able to safely and confidently take part in an idling action event, and you'll be able to engage with drivers to improve the air quality in your local area. So we're going to start with a little bit around what air pollution is and why we need to improve the air that we're breathing. So when we talk about air pollution, we can be talking about gases, but also particles in the air which are harmful to health. Nitrogen dioxide is a toxic gas. It comes from burning fossil fuels, such as the engines in the vehicles that we might drive, as well as heating and power in buildings, and also some cooking facilities. You might have heard around particulate matter, PM, which is made up of tiny particles of solids or liquids that are suspended in the air. They're released when we burn fuels or from the wearing of materials such as brakes and tires, as well as dust from construction processes. Something interesting is that actually air quality is impacted by electric vehicles as much, if not more, than petrol vehicles with the particulate matter, because they're that bit heavier and their tire pressure and wear also leaves particulate matter. So this does apply to all vehicles. The PM applies to the size of the vehicles. 2.5 particulates are smaller than the 10 particulates, and of course they can then infiltrate your body worse. Poor air quality is the largest environmental risk to public health, and exposing people to air pollution damages our health throughout our lives. Short-term exposure over just hours or days include exacerbating or triggering existing health conditions such as asthma, with symptoms including coughing, wheezing, and shortness of breath. Longer-term exposure over years can lead to chronic conditions such as respiratory and cardiovascular disease, as well as strokes and lung cancer, and reducing life expectancy. So what the three takeaways in terms of the facts are: air pollution can cause us harm even if we don't notice it at the time. It affects all of us throughout all of our lives, and we're all at risk, but some are more vulnerable than others. There are lots of different sources of air pollution. Road transport, heating and powered buildings, and commercial catering contributes, as you can see on these charts, different sources of nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter. The top chart shows us the contribution of different sources of nitrogen dioxide, and you can see that road transport is by far and away the biggest contributor. However, the bottom chart shows the contribution of different sources of particulate matter pollution. Road transport is a significant contributor there as well. So some key facts to note about air pollution. Research has found that exposure to air pollution results in a significant number of deaths each year, which leads to a significant cost for our healthcare system and the economy, leading to reduced productivity, higher rates of sickness and absenteeism. Now, we're all at risk from air pollution, but some people are more vulnerable to the health effects than others, such as children, older people, pregnant women, and people with existing health conditions. For example, prolonged air pollution exposure can inhibit lung growth in children and lead to reduced lung capacity. In the elderly, it can lead to accelerated decline in lung function and has also been linked to dementia, heart failure, and strokes. Some communities are disproportionately affected by air pollution, as in they are exposed to more air pollution and experience worse health results as the impact of that exposure. This may be because of where they live, such as near busy roads, And typically in the southeast, deprived neighbourhoods as well as ethnic minority populations are exposed to higher levels of air pollution. Children are particularly vulnerable, as I mentioned. They breathe more quickly. Their faces are closer to tailpipes. They're just that bit shorter. And the studies have shown that poor air quality is associated with an increase in inhaler prescriptions and a decrease in lung capacity. So these are real impacts affecting our children. So what's being done to tackle the problem? On an international scale, the World Health Organization have recommended strict guidelines on NO2 and particulate matter limits. The UK generally and all major towns in Hertfordshire are regularly exceeding these limits. And those limits are, to be fair, a lot lower than what has been included in national and European guidelines. The UK is mindful to be working towards adopting the World Health Organization guidelines. The Environment Bill has been approved by government, setting out air quality standards for the country and what powers are given to local authorities. So local authorities therefore have to have action plans and air quality management areas for how they'll ensure air quality standards are achieved and maintained. In Hertfordshire, they've also successfully achieved DEFRA funding to install monitors and have behaviour change campaigns over the course of the next 12 to 15 months. At a local authority level, districts and borough level, we have responsibility under legislation to monitor air quality. And where the concentrations exceed national targets, boroughs have to designate an air quality management area. The engagement and the awareness piece is important. Enforcement is one of the options available to districts and boroughs, but not all districts and boroughs go down that route. So the idling issue. Depending on the district or borough, unnecessarily engine idling may be subject to a fine if the driver doesn't switch off when asked by an officer. Short-term exposure to particulate matter can exacerbate acute health effects and increase mortality rates. And the issue of idling is, it is polluting the air. Unlike a moving vehicle, the emissions from an idling vehicle accumulate in one location, leading to higher concentrations of pollutants. It's almost always unnecessary. And an idling car produces enough exhaust emissions to fill 150 balloons a minute. That's why we are working together to help support these idling action events across Hertfordshire. So that logo in the top right hand of your screen, HCCSP. We are a partnership of all 10 district and borough councils, as well as Hertfordshire County Council and the LEP, who are collaborating on Hertfordshire climate change and sustainability action. And we are funded by all of those councils and the LEP working together. Obviously, that's all a bit of a mouthful, so we just go with HCCSP. We have over 150 actions that all of the councils have agreed to put in place, with over 18 of them impacting idling, active travel, and other traffic reduction and air quality improvement actions. This project will be kickstarting many of those actions with a coordinated campaign, engaging community groups with this action, and using free resources from Global Action Plan and Clean Air Day. So, your task as a volunteer. We are going to work to motivate drivers to switch off now and in the future. An idling action event is one that takes place in an idling action hotspot in a borough. It might be outside a school, a high street, or a residential area where lots of idling vehicles have been identified. So, at an idling action event, volunteers work together in small groups and pairs to walk the streets, identify potentially idling drivers in their vehicles, and speaking to those drivers to educate them about the impacts of idling and encouraging them to switch off. So, we'll start off by approaching a driver. You speak to them to educate them about idling, make switching off seem like an appealing prospect such that they would like to do it themselves in order to prove local air quality. Encourage others are doing it and others are working together to improve local air quality. As well as speaking to drivers who are idling, we can also talk to drivers who aren't idling and thank them for switching off too. You can also talk to pedestrians about what you're doing to encourage word of mouth and behaviour change. So your task will be, in pairs, approach the vehicle, observe whether it's idling, wait approximately 30 seconds to identify whether we can class the vehicle as idling or whether they'll switch off their engine without being asked. Encourage an interaction by being friendly and smiley as you approach. We only ever approach the vehicle from the pavement. We don't touch the vehicle. You make yourself known to the driver, though, so we usually suggest you wave through the window and encourage them to wind their window down. Once they've wound it down, we can then talk to them. So we're going to make them feel part of a positive movement to improve local air quality. Other people are doing it. They can join in, be persuasive, give people the facts about air pollution and health. Try not to appear too judgmental or accusing. They're probably idling out of habit rather than knowledge or awareness. So the introduction. Hi there, my name's Helen. I'm working on an event in the borough today, and we're asking drivers to switch off our engines while you're stationary to try to improve air quality. Then start with a fact. Did you know that air pollution is causing asthma in children? Ask them to switch off and see if they'll pledge to always switch off their engines when they're stationary from now on. Thank them for their involvement and give them one of the leaflets that you'll be given. Then we walk away from the vehicle. Once you're away from the vehicle, you can record the interaction on a paper log that you'll be given by your group leader, which will help us collect together the evaluation of the impact of all of these different idling events across the county. So a script could look like this. Hi there, I'm part of an event today for Clean Air Day. We're asking drivers to switch off their engines while they're stationary. Do you know that air pollution is causing asthma in children? Ask if they'll switch off their engines. Once they have, can they pledge to switch off in future? If they're prepared to take a photograph, then they'll need to fill out a photo permission form, walk away, and then record the interaction. Just to be clear, the recording of the interaction only notes the colour and the size of the vehicle and whether the individual turned off the car or not, or the van. So we're not doing make and model, we're not taking names or any contact details. And if anybody were to ask you, you can show them there is no GDPR appropriate text or information on those forms. So while you're taking part as a volunteer, it's important to understand the reasons that people may idle. We're not encouraging individuals to act as enforcement agencies, and we just suggest strongly that you don't discuss any criminal activity that may be taking place. It's not our role, and we strongly encourage your groups not to take that stance. The language that we would suggest you might like to focus on is around air quality implications. So the cost of fuel, the impacts on health, and perhaps it's useful to know that these reasons here are not relevant either. So the leaflet that you'll be provided with has myth-busting facts. The not reasons are provided to help change behaviour on the flyer. There are some vehicles that are allowed to idle, mainly for technical reasons. However, there are lots of things that are not good reasons for idling, such as needing to listen to the radio or charge their phone. The engine does not need to run for these to happen. This won't be relevant for for a June intervention, but it might be in the autumn when people say that they need to keep their car heating on and therefore the engine running. The car should stay warm for a good few minutes while parked up, or perhaps there may be a discussion about next time they're doing this journey to bring a bigger coat. So some people believe that switching off and switching on again could create more pollution than leaving the engine on. This is not true. It's been proven that switching off and on again produces half the amount of air pollution than 1 minute of idling. When you start, we suggest that you have a look at the leaflet that you've got to give you a little bit more information on the myths and how we could think about refuting those. So the core messages are: air pollution damages hearts, lungs, and brains. It's especially damaging to children, pregnant women, older people, and people with existing health conditions. It's bad for you as a driver, with pollution levels actually potentially being 10 times higher inside the vehicle than out. However, if at any time you don't feel comfortable with the conversation or how the conversation is going with the driver, if they're arguing or you don't want to engage or they're getting into a debate, simply walk away. It is not your role to have to try to convince them. And if you don't feel that you have the information or you don't want to get into a detailed debate, then you absolutely do not have to. So, excuse me. At the beginning of the event, you'll be given a more detailed health and safety briefing going through the specific risk assessment for your event. Just to be clear, HCCSP is encouraging these events to take place, but they are in no way being delivered by HCCSP. So each individual event will have to have its own risk assessment and will have to go through its own processes to make sure that it is being delivered safely. So your event organizer should then make sure that you've signed your risk assessment to say that you have read it. We never work alone. We would never expect any individuals to approach a driver individually or to have a conversation on your own. So always work in pairs or small groups. Always wear a high-vis vest. It helps with that authority and makes it you look a bit more noticeable. If you don't have access to any high-vis vests, we have them available to borrow. We would be more than happy to loan them out. Always approach from the curbside. That may mean that you have to talk through the passenger window, but that is much safer than walking into the road. Adhere to safe road crossings, normal pedestrian safety, and if you feel unwell or tired, you can simply stop. And if the driver doesn't switch off after 2 minutes, simply walk away. Your safety is far more important for this event than any other debates that you might want to get into. The key thing to remember is to keep everyone safe and comfortable, and suggest you don't stray too far from your event leader, or at least have some kind of checking in mechanism so that pairs can make sure that they feel comfortable at all times. So we want to make sure that this is not a one-off event. I'm pleased to say that the Idling Action campaign for this spring is in association with Clean Air Day on the 16th of June. This happens every year. And so we are keen to encourage Clean Air Day as an anchor event for June 16th. However, HCC has successfully secured DEFRA funding for air quality improvement work across the county, which will be kickstarting in autumn 2022. So HCCSP will then be working with HCC to facilitate and leverage its partners' communities to mark this Clean Air Day, and then kickstart a series of interventions and monitoring in the coming months, as well as supporting those idling action champions to then potentially deliver further idling intervention action days in future dates of their choosing. So you'll probably want to ask your event organizer to make sure that the health and safety form has been completed and submitted. You'll have one that you'll need to read as a volunteer, and then one that you'll need to sign just to make sure that you've read it. We suggest that individual event leaders submit risk assessments to their local councils and any businesses nearby, just to demonstrate that they've thought of these steps and issues. If you have any questions on how to make sure that your event is safe, please get in touch. So thank you very much for listening to this presentation on idling and volunteering to take part in an idling action event. If you've got any questions on the day, make sure you speak to the event leader, or event leaders can get in touch with me on my details here. Thank you so much.